My name is Sid. I work as a staff software engineer at Gatsby, and my talk today is about rendering modes for the Jamstack, also Gatsby v4. So let's take a quick history lesson, right? The Jamstack has traditionally been all about static site generation. We've had Gatsby, Hugo, Jekyll, a lot of static site generators, and all of these have built your pages at build time into static assets, right? And this has had a lot of benefits. We've had benefits including scale. You could have a ton of traffic on your Jamstack site, and that's all right. It still wouldn't cost as much, still would be fast, and that's been great. SEO has been fantastic. Search engine crawlers have absolutely no problem crawling static assets. This also doesn't require service consumption at runtime. What I mean by service consumption is that several APIs that you source your data from to build these static assets, these don't need to be consumed at runtime. So there's less stuff that can break, when the user visits your website. And this is, and hence, I mean, Jamstack sites have traditionally scaled really well with traffic for these reasons. But they have their limitations. Things start getting tricky when you do really large sites, and that doesn't scale because now you have really long build times, right? Gatsby sites that have over 100,000 pages can take a really long time to build. It's also hard to do A/B testing. Any kind of personalization that you want to do per user needs to happen in the client, and that can sometimes be limiting. Also, SEO, which the Jamstack is great for, suddenly becomes an issue when these personalized pages need to, need good SEO as well, because now since it's all client side, some search engines still can't run your JavaScript, so that gets tricky. The other end of the spectrum, with Next and so on, has been SSR. And SSR has been great. We've been doing for years, and it's worked, but stuff is just harder because your cache is harder to predict at runtime, right? Your cache is a function of service consumption at runtime. All of your APIs need to be up and going every time a user visits your site. If they're not, and if there's a cache miss, then you have a problem. Stuff could break. It also can get really expensive with increasing traffic, and therefore doesn't really scale well with a lot of traffic. What about the middle of the spectrum, though? There's got to be some sweet spot in the middle, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. We've had, I've built sites that have, almost like micro front ends where some pages are server side rendered, the ones that need personalization or A/B testing, and other critical pages are statically generated. And I want to let's just call this mixed rendering for now, right? I just came up with that name, and that works. It's typically a good compromise. It scales well for any site, size of site. If you have a lot of pages of a certain type, you can render them at runtime via SSR. And the ones that are critical and get a lot of traffic and that can be cached at build time can be statically generated. This is great. However, this has its issues as well. Because we've now sort of split SSR and SSG and we've split the site into sort of parts, consistency can become a problem. Imagine if you have some pages that are statically generated, almost like, let's say there's a e-commerce site where the home page needs to be statically generated, but has, a dash, like a carousel of many products. Now, if some of these products aren't available, which get rendered via SSR, user might click on a product that looks like it's available on the home page, but clicks through to a page where it says unavailable, right? Like that kind of lack of consistency between these two different kinds of pages can be a real problem. And this is where mixed rendering tends to fall apart with sites that are really large and at a lot of scale. This sort of stuff is hard to fix. How do we fix this? One thing that we've been doing at Gatsby over the past few years is that we've been trying to make your builds faster. We've been trying to really take SSG and scale it to whatever limits we could. But we've hit those limits too now, where we've been building sites that are over 1 million pages, and there's only so much you can do to make builds faster, right? They're still going to be a function of your data and the number of pages, irrespective of how linear that function is. So now, with Gatsby v4, I'd like to introduce a better middle of the spectrum. We're calling it deferred static generation, right? The idea here is that you get all the benefits of SSG, but with the scale of SSR, right? And the flexibility of SSR. You get fast build times because only your critical pages, only the pages that you want, are built at build time, right? And now, instead of your pages being a function of, or rather, instead of your build times being a function of your number of pages, your build times are now a function of just pages that you choose to build at build time. And you get the same benefits as your typical SSG site, right? You don't need service consumption at runtime. Those APIs don't need to be up, because what we do is we snapshot your data, and that snapshot sort of is isolated from the rest of the world. We don't need to hit your APIs or your CMSs at runtime, but that snapshot is sort of self-contained. And each time a user requests a page, we then build that page for them on demand, right? This sort of pulls back that cache way back in the stack. And as a result of this, we get to guarantee consistency. That cache is not edge specific. It's a lot more deterministic, just like how you're used to with SSG. And Gatsby v4 now supports all of these rendering modes. You can do SSG, which is rendering ahead of time, like you've been used to. You can do SSR, which is just in time, and you can do DSG, which we're calling, which we like to say is fashionably late, right? How does this work under the hood? When you run create pages in Gatsby, you need to add a single option. It's defer. That's it. Just set defer to true, and the page will automatically be skipped at build time. We deploy a page engine, which is a snapshot of your data and a bunch of JavaScript that we need to render your page. And all of this is deployed on the edge. On the first time a user requests this page will now be built and stored in GCS, right? Cloud storage. And after that first request, you can think of it as just plain old SSG. You get the same benefits. You don't need to hit your APIs. Everything works as previously, that you've been used to. But instead of building that page at build time, we defer it all the way till when it's used. And now consecutive requests are the same as how you've been used to. So try Gatsby v4 right now. The way to do that is npm install Gatsby at next. We're still in beta. GA isn't here yet, but by the time you're watching this, it might just be. We currently work on Gatsby Cloud, and kudos to the folks at Netlify. They've also been working on support. It also works on Netlify as of today. Bias aside, I have to say that our Gatsby Cloud implementation is a lot faster. We have SSR pods running for your site all the time that have really no cold startup time. But you can conceivably take this code and run it anywhere you want, right? And Netlify is a good example. They've been able to ship support really early, so there isn't vendor lock-in per se. And if you'd like to try out all of these modes, an easy way to do that is that we have a starter now. It's called Gatsby Starter Rendering Modes, right? If you're used to using Gatsby, you know that you can create a new site using starter. Go ahead and try running Gatsby new with this URL. And you'll get a site with a page that is SSG, a page that is SSR, and a page that is DSG. And you get to try all of them out. You see how they work, and you get a feel for what these different rendering modes are. Right. So with this, you can now ship sites that don't have to be in the middle of the spectrum, but can be really anywhere, right? You can have sites that are primarily SSG, but with a couple of deferred pages, and maybe some pages that are SSR that you don't want to defer, and instead want to personalize on a per user request basis. Or you can have sites that are completely SSR, but have some SSG pages. Or you can conceivably even have a site that has neither, but just all pages built on the first request. This is what we've been doing. We hope you like it. Try out Gatsby v4. And thank you. I'd love to answer questions.